Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to take a first look at this. It's the brand new Vern 2 from Nortent. I'm going to look at the cost, the weight and the specs of it, and I'm also going to get it pitched and see what I think of it once it's up. Let's have a look. To kick things off, for full disclosure, Nortent sent this tent to me free of charge, and that's why it said paid promotion when you clicked on this video. I'm not on commission, I'm not being paid to say nice things, I'm not obliged or contractually signed up to say good things only about this tent, so you're going to get my honest thoughts, my honest feedback and opinions. This is the first time I've pitched this tent. I took it out of the bag briefly in the kitchen earlier, but I haven't actually spread it out or anything, so you're going to look at it for the first time with me. Now, when we're all looking for new tents, cost plays a really big part in narrowing things down. So this tent in the UK is £722 at the time of filming, and that's buying it from Valley & Peak, who are the UK distributor for these tents. That price includes free postage, and it also includes the footprint, which not all tents do. The Vern 2 has a few natural rivals, ranging from slightly cheaper to a lot more expensive. So the Kuiu Stormstar 2 and the Terra Nova Quasar both come in at around about £600–650. Remember, this is 722. And the Hilleberg Steiker, I would also say, is a rival for this tent. That comes in at around about £1,300, and I don't think that includes the footprint either. A few other YouTubers have already reviewed the Vern 1, which is the one-person version of this tent, and they are directly comparing it to the Hilleberg Solo, and I can really see why straight away. The materials and the build quality of this tent do look excellent. As I say, I've only unravelled it slightly on the kitchen table, and I've taken the various components out of the tent bag here, and I've weighed them on my kitchen scales just to see what the true weights are compared to the claimed weights, and I'll get into those now. Okay, so you'll just have to forgive me for referring to my phone here because I weighed everything in this bag and I've got all the weights broken down here. So the claimed maximum weight is 4.2 kilograms, which would be everything you take with you on a camp. I weigh it out at 4.475, so that's 275 grams more than the claimed maximum weight, and that's without the footprint. With the included footprint added in as well, I get 4.948 kilograms, so just under the 5 kilo mark. That is heavy for a two-person tent, or at least a two-person backpacking tent you're going to take out with you, but you really have to remember the strength this tent is going to give you, and you really can't get dependable strength for a really lightweight package. So a two-person tent, maybe you can get them at under 3 kilograms, but it's just not going to give you the strength that this will, and we're going to look at that later when I pitch this. So the stakes, there are 24 stakes included with this tent, and I'm going to make sure that is enough to pitch it fully. They're 16 grams each, which I weighed, and in their bag that totals at 403 grams, so it's nearly half a kilogram just for the stakes. So straight away, if you want to go really lightweight, maybe you'll be able to pitch it with fewer than 24 stakes, and maybe you could even take your own lighter weight stakes along if you don't want that brutal strength that these give you, and I can tell you they are chunky. The poles in their bag, there are 5 poles, 9mm poles. They come in at 1,064 grams. So there's a lot of weight there, but as I say, it's going to be a really strong tent with 5 poles. Funnily enough, on the Valley & Peak website, they claim a weight of 750 grams, and I presume they took that straight from Nortent. So yeah, there's actually a 300 gram difference there between the claimed weight and the actual weight. The footprint is 473 grams. Footprints are never light, and this is a two-person tent, so that's going to add a bit of weight, and I'll have a quick chat about why you might want a footprint when I start pitching the tent. And the tent itself in its bag is 3,008 grams, so basically 3 kilograms. So 3 kilograms is quite a lot of weight, as I'm sure you'll agree, but we're going to have a look at just why this is so heavy, and I'd also like to have a bit of a lean on the tent and see just how strong it is. I'm afraid the breeze here today is about 5 miles an hour, which is really good for me for filming because it means hopefully you don't have too much wind noise on the microphone. But I think to test this thing and see how it can really take the wind, I'm going to have to lug it up a mountain and subject it to some British weather. Well, my arms are actually getting tired holding this thing now because it's 5 kilograms, so before I start looking at the material specs, I'm going to get it out of the bag and we'll have a closer look. Okay, let's have a look at this thing. It's really boggy out here today, so it's going to be quite sad to put my brand new tent down on this muddy, boggy ground, but you can't really get too protective over these things, can you? Okay, so let's get this Velcro strap off it. We've got some really nice materials here. So the fly sheet is 30 denier 3000mm hydrostatic head sil nylon, and well, that's a big B. And the ground sheet is 70 denier 10,000mm hydrostatic head, which is as waterproof as you need to go, really. And we've got the poles here. There are 5 poles, and they are 9mm diameter, so they are nice and chunky. That's a lot of pole to keep your tent up, isn't it? And these are colour coded as well, so there are going to be 2 red, 2 blue, and 1 black. And those colours coincide with the different sleeve colours around the tent, so it just makes it nice and easy sticking the right pole in the right sleeve. Down here we have the footprint, so I haven't actually opened this yet. I can see there's 1 red clip there and some other black clips and straps, so I presume these are going to fasten the footprint to the bottom of the tent. And a footprint is really useful for a number of reasons. Really, it protects the bottom of your tent, so it reduces the chances of you puncturing your ground sheet and getting water leak inside the tent. It gives you a nice dry surface to work on straight away, so when you pitch the tent, if you're on wet boggy ground like this, because you're going to pitch it with your footprint straight away, you've got a dry surface you can put your kit on, you can cook on, anything like that. You're not just swimming around in a mud bog because you're protected by this. And another bonus feature of a footprint is that it keeps all that moisture packed down beneath the footprint. If all of that wet grass and everything can start evaporating water into the inside of your tent in the night, that can really contribute to condensation. So I really like using footprints. A lot of people don't like them, mainly because of the weight, I think, and maybe it's some extra expense as well. This weighed in at nearly 0.5 kilogram, so you'd have to start questioning what you really want. Do you want to be the lightest you can be? Do you want a bit more protection and maybe reduce condensation? The decision is yours, but this is included in that £722 price. And on to what is currently my favourite part of the tent, because I haven't actually opened the tent out properly. These are the stakes, and these things are absolute beasts. They are really, really chunky. They're 16 grams each, so really good length, looks about 6 inches long. They are Y stakes as well, really heavy duty, and they've all got Dyneema pull cords on them as well. So these are really heavy but really strong, and as I said, you could potentially save some weight from the whole package here if you've got your own lighter stakes that you wanted to use. Also in the pack we have this little bag, and it's got some repair patches for, looks like, your ground sheet and your fly sheet. And there's also, yeah, ground sheet there, fly sheet there, the green material. And then we've also, oh, there are 2 patches here, the 2 different meshes. So we've got the bug mesh over here, and then we've got the inner tent fabric here. So 4 patches there. Also in the bag we've got some spare Guylines, and there's a little bit of spare paracord, well, bungee there as well. There's also a little clip which looks like one of the footprint clips there, and you'll also see a tube there. That is silicone seam sealer, and I am going to talk about that because that's been a bit of a talking point with the Nortent tents that have come out this year, because there are instructions there for you to seam seal your tent if you want to. So the big question is, do I need to? Do I want to? Do I have to? Is my tent waterproof if I don't? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the technique that Nortent use to stitch their seams, and then maybe after that you can decide whether or not you want to use a seam sealant. Personally, I'm not going to use it, particularly before I use the tent, so I'm going to use the tent, see how it fares. Maybe I'll want to afterwards, but I suspect I won't. And then of course there is the tent itself. This is the brand new 2024 Vern 2 sil nylon version, and I can't wait to get this thing pitched and have a look at what it's like when it's up. And I'm really sad because there's already some mud on it. It's brand new out of the box and I got it muddy, but that's what these things are made for. Straight away I seem to have made a mistake. So the footprint actually needs to go the other way up. So clever me now has a nice muddy underside, which actually should have been the upper side. So turning it over this way just confused me a little bit, because now I've got all the seam tape facing upwards, and I expected that to be facing downwards, but it looks as though this is where it needs to go, because I've now got the red strap over here, and that seems to correspond with the red strap up in this corner on the tent. So let's try again. Red strap into red strap, and now I should be able to work my way around. Okay, that is the tent fully connected to its footprint now, which I think is the right way up. So what I'm now going to do is follow Nortent's instructions. They say to start with the black colour-coded sleeve. So with those two sleeves, go down to the base of those and get the pegging point. Peg the first one, pull the opposite black side tight, and then you do the two ends, and then you finish up with the blue poles, I imagine. So now I want the opposite black side, which is this one. And now I can go to the two ends. They say to pull these nice and tight. So what you're doing is you're pegging the base of the tent down, much like I do with my Hilleberg solo. You peg the base of it down and then you put your poles in. That means that the base is nice and firmly fixed to the ground before you start to build it up, and any wind can really pick up the tent. So doing it this way means that it's nice and stable. You don't risk everything blowing away in the wind. So I'll pull these nice and tight. Hopefully that's round about right. And then the same down the bottom end. So I'll bring you with me now and show you that we've got the main shape of the tent all pegged down there. And it is looking like a big tent. I'll leave the camera around this side and I'll show you the rest of the pitching from over this side of the tent. Okay, so we've now got the blue bits to pull out. So I'll peg that one there, get everything nice and tight. This one as well. The instructions don't actually talk about pegging out these blue bits, so I don't know if I'm maybe getting ahead of the game here. We'll find out. And the last one over here. Again, pulling everything out so it's nice and tight. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stakes used up already. That's just to get the main footprint down. So what's next is getting the poles in, starting with the black pole. It always makes it easier to pitch a tent if you get the poles out and build them all up first and just lie them next to your tent, because then as and when you're ready for each one, you can just reach over and pick it up. You'll see from this one, it's a grey pole, but it's got a red end. So this is one of the red poles. There are two of those. Here's the second one. Nortent make it very clear in their pitch instructions that you have to make sure that every single pole section is properly seated, making sure you get that full overlap. So where you slide your pole on, make sure it seats all the way down to the bottom, because if there's any gap at all like that, then that can be a point where the pole will fail. Look at these brand new poles. I think it causes some concern for some people when they get a brand new tent, they put all the poles together, they're all perfectly straight like this, and then after the very first use, when they take it down, they find that the poles are slightly bent. That's completely normal because the poles will take on a little bit of memory. So once you've pitched the tent once and they've had to bend into shape, they do retain that shape a little bit. So don't panic too much if that happens to you. So here's the black pole with its black end there. So I'll put this into the black sleeve. And then come over to this side and go for the corresponding black sleeve. And that's a nice solid seat there at the bottom of the sleeve. Really meaty reinforced pockets there for them to go into. Just so you know, this is the pitching information booklet I'm working from. So I've got all the pitching instructions down here. This came with the tent and some of the specs and interesting information down there as well. So I begin and set the black pole, then the two blue poles. So I'll do the blue poles next. Okay, that's those three main poles in. Now it's time for the more interesting poles, the two long red poles, and these will go slightly diagonally across the tent. And this is where you're really going to start seeing that geodesic crossover shape coming from. And then we go with the final pole. This is the structure we've got right now. As you can see, we've got the base all pegged out. All of the poles are in their sleeves, so they're all nicely secured there. But because the tent isn't actually connected to the poles, it's still lying really low. So if you have any wind coming from the side here, there isn't really much surface area for that wind to try and pull at. That's what makes tents like this really good to pitch in the wind. So you can see all of these crossover points up here, they're going to make the tent really strong. And what I'm going to do now is start clipping in the poles and build up the structure. What I'm noticing straight away is that even though these clips are a very similar shape to my Hilleberg clips, they are much easier to connect onto the pole. So there isn't quite that same springiness and stiffness to the clip, which means that they just sort of fall on around the circumference of the pole instead of having to really sort of snap them into place. At the moment, my only comment about that is that it's making it much easier to pitch, but I'll find out soon if that feels as though it gives the tent any less structure because these clips are not as, I don't think strong is the right word, I think it's just the springiness and the sort of tight fit of the clips isn't quite as I don't know what the word is I want. I'm starting to waffle already, I can tell. But yeah, I'm just noticing some differences as I go. I've got that one the wrong way round. That needs to go that side. Okay, we're really starting to feel the strength of this tent build now. As each extra clip goes in, I can start to feel a little bit more tension coming onto the fly sheet, also going through the poles. That one might be in the wrong place as well. There are going to be a few bits like this where you get to know your tent and you get to know how to pitch it best. Yeah, that's right. It's really interesting seeing this tent take shape. Yeah, some real tension in there now. Looks like I'm actually going to struggle to reach into the middle because I'm not the tallest person. I'm around about 5'9". I'm actually having to stand on the fly sheet here to get in towards the middle. Just lift that up over my foot. Yeah, that's actually quite a big reach for me. I got there in the end. Yeah, I can really hear the tension coming into that fly sheet now as I get the last few clips on. 2 more in here. You can see I'm just going to pick the fly sheet up again because I don't really want to be standing on the tent to get to these clips. It's really just that middle one. I can hardly reach that one. And I've got 2 to go over here. Wow, there's some tension in here now. Let me just check, do I have all the clips? I think I do. Okay, let's have another walk around. So this is the Vern 2 now, largely pitched. So you can see, look at the shape of the tent and the fly sheet and how taut it's pulled. We've got some kind of ruckles in here because I need to pull this one over a little bit. So if I get this point and pull it over, that's just me not quite pegging that down properly. So you can see that peg out point was a bit slack, so if I do that, that panel's pulled a little bit tighter now. But what a beast. You can see all the crossover points here. Each point where the poles intersect, you get a really strong transfer of all the various loads that are going to go through the tent. And wow, look at the width of that. This isn't, I mean, this is a shelter and a half. There's definitely some tension on the top there. And you can see that they've done a very similar thing to Hilleberg here. So the Guylines come with fairly meaty straps and you wrap those around the pole and then pull the Guylines out and peg those down. So I think, I mean, there are a couple of bits I haven't done quite right. So here's another peg out point that's a little bit slack. So I'll pull that out properly. But otherwise, that has pitched really well. And this thing, okay, so when I was picking the tent up and trying to arrange it to get the footprint on earlier, I noticed this weird panel of a strange material that I hadn't noticed before on a tent. I'm just trying to get this toggle in with one hand. It's always a good test if you can do anything on a tent with one hand. So we've got this, and this appears to be a heat-proof material for a hot tent chimney. So you could have a bit of a wood burner or something in here, I guess, or a stove within the tent, and you can pass that up through here. So I'm not actually sure if that is an option, if that comes on all Vern 2s, or if you have to spec that so that you can make yourself a hot tent. I will ask Nortent about that, and I'll post up a little bit of text up here to tell you what the deal is with that, because if that's going to add extra weight, I would quite like it if I could remove it from the spec. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is get these guylines out. I don't think I'm going to put them all in because it's going to take me quite a long time, but yeah, I'll just show you how one or two of them go together. That just covers over with the Velcro strips around the flap. I can't really see that letting any weather in unless you have some really extreme wind blowing up this way, but that's a strong seal there, I think. So I'll leave that covered up for now. This is a feature that's been quite popular with new owners so far, I think. A little simple bungee tie here to keep your guy lines connected up and out of the way. So what we do here is unravel our guy line. And you can take this piece of fabric here, wrap it around the poles. That pulls them together and transfers the load from the guy line into the pole structure. In fact, I can probably take that round again. I can take that round loads of times if I really want to. How do I want? Okay, I think I'm finally happy with that. So I've just gone for a fairly simple wrap around the two poles there. That pulls the poles together and transfers the load from the guy line through the pole system into this really nicely reinforced section down the seams. And we have a line lock on the guy line here, so I'll pull this out. We'll see how that all looks. So that's my guy line in. I can just pull the line lock tight to tension that. And there's also a little clip on the end vent here, and you can just clip that on over the guy line, and that makes sure that vent always stays open and you get a good through flow of air to keep your condensation levels down. I have to be completely honest, I'm still just marvelling at the strength of this thing. So we've got 6 guy lines down each side and then another 1 on each end, so that's 14 guy lines in total. And it somehow escaped my attention, so mainly, I mean, I can't say I'm not interested in the Vern 1. That is my primary interest because it's so comparable to my Hilleberg Solo. I hadn't spent all that much time looking at the Vern 2, and I completely overlooked the fact that it's got 4 doors on it. So we've got 1 door on this corner, 1 door around here, and then of course we've got the same down the other end as well. So there's 1 door here with its hood and another door here with its hood. So you've got this little ventilation hood up here. So I am definitely learning with you as I pitch this tent. It's kind of blown my mind because look at the size of the thing. I'm just going to put the camera down again and stand next to it just so you get a proper feel for how big this tent is. So me standing next to it with my arms out, this thing is just huge. And it's really, really sturdy. I've got 1 guy line out at the moment. I haven't even held the poles out with their guy lines. So with these guy lines strapped on as well, this thing is going to be just an immovable structure. In fact, I think I'm going to have to apply for planning permission when I first pitch this tent on a mountain, because it's a semi-permanent structure. Let's get one of these doors open and have a look inside. I haven't seen inside yet. That was easy to use. How are we pegging this back? I have seen people, yeah, they have a clip on here like the Terra Nova tents do. So you can clip that over here somewhere, I guess, and then sort of partially zip the door back up if you want that open and holding where it is, just caught on the storm flap there. Yeah, you can do something like that. But I'll get that fully open for now. And I'll roll all of this back. I can see here that the footprint is really loose, but that's very easy to sort out because I have some nice adjustable buckles down here. I can just pull each one of those tight to get that tensioned. Same on the other side as well if I want to, and that just gets the footprint sitting nicely. I'll bring you over again. So here we go. This is just one of the many benefits of having a footprint. I can sit in here straight away. I'm on muddy ground, but I can stay dry, take my shoes off if I want to, get things set up. Wow, this thing is serious. There's also a tensioner down in this corner, so you can see that the inner tent's a little bit loose at the moment. I can just tension that up. There'll be one on each side, I presume. So I've now been able to tension that inner portion, and I dare say there'll be adjusters down the far end as well. So here we have the entrance. I want to make sure I'm not too muddy. Okay, so yeah, we've got some little pockets on the back side of the door, so I can just stuff the door in there, and I'll bring you in for a look. In we go to the Vern 2. So you can see there's a pretty big vestibule here. That is enormous. I'm going to take some measurements soon as well, so I'll tell you what's what. And here we are on the inside, and what a place this is. So we've got one pocket there, another one there, and one over here. I've got the door stuffed in here at the minute, but it looks as though you could also just hold the door up here with these toggles. We have a drying line up there and a drying line there, and another clip up there for a lantern. Or I suppose you could run another short drying line up there if you wanted to. We've got the same oval door on that side. I actually quite like the oval door look. I suppose I'd have some reservations about how high up the bathtub came, because it's quite nice to have the bottom of the door right on the floor of the tent, so you can put your legs out and you're not sort of pulling on the top of the tent. I'll have a go at that soon, but yeah, first impressions, this is big in here. I'm just moving the floor around down here to see how loose it is, so I haven't tensioned out the edges yet. It looks like there might be another tensioner in the middle there, so there'll be 6. I'll show you the one down here. So you've got the strap that goes from the inner tent to the outer tent, and you can just pull that up and get it a little bit tighter. And it's the same idea with the footprint. So here's that red strap I was talking about earlier, and I can just pull on that strap and get the footprint tensioned out nicely. Here's the inside of one of the end vents, so you can see there's a nice path there straight through the vent and into the tent. It looks like I can still tension that a bit more yet. Yeah, that's better. So the inner tent is a much better tension now, and I could do a little bit more just to get it perfect, but I think you get the idea. So what I'm now going to do is inflate my 2 sleeping pads I brought down. One is an Exped Sinmat UL7, and the other one is my Thermarest Neoair X-Therm Max Regular Wide. So I'll inflate those and put them in here, and you can see how it looks. And I'm not going to inflate 2 sleeping pads for you with my mouth, so I'll break out the trusty Flextail Tiny Pump 2X. Get this pressed on, and we'll let that do the hard work. Okay, I've taken my shoes off so I can get in the tent properly, and I've got my 2 sleeping pads here. So my Neoair is a 63 centimetre, nearly 25 inch wide pad, and the Exped pad is about 24.5 inches or 62 centimetres. They're fitting side by side. There's a little bit of a gap in between, just enough to get my fingers between really. And if I push them both up to the end, we've got around about 8 inches beyond the pad, a little bit more if I push the tent out, 8 to 9 inches up at the head end of the pad. So definitely enough space for 2 people, because these pads are quite wide. You can definitely get narrower pads, but there is enough space in here. The vestibule is huge, so the distance of If I go right out to the outer tent, that is just over a metre, or about 39.5 inches. If I just go out to the footprint, where the footprint ends, that's about 35 inches or 90 centimetres. So that is a lot of space for storing a lot of kit. And the width of the footprint up here is about 1.85 meters, which is just over 6 feet wide. So you're not going to struggle to store a huge amount of kit out here. You can also do your cooking. Of course, you have the same each side. So the tent is mirrored on both sides. You've got 2 doors each end. Obviously, I've got this door closed at the moment, but they're both open fully like this, so you get a really good view out. What have we got going on in here in terms of height? So from the tent floor, get it down between the sleep pads up to the top there, I have 1.2 meters or around about 40 inches high in the middle of the tent, and that actually is maintained for a lot of the width. So we have a high point in the middle, and then it only slightly tapers out to the edges here. So if I measure that lower point just out there, that is about 94 centimeters. So you've got 94 centimeters height over about 97 centimeters of the tent's width. So, I mean, you can see I'm fully sitting up here, and I'm actually on the bit where it tapers out. So if I come to the middle, to the high point, I've got quite a lot there, sort of 4 or 5 inches above my head. I'll try and measure it if I can, just because we're here, why not? So if I come to the middle, if I sit up, I'm going to try and see, that's 5 inches there. Yeah, that's 5 inches above my head to the top of the tent, and I'm sitting on my sleep pad as well. So this is really spacious. Like I say, you've got the 2 drying lines here as well. You can hang all sorts on there. You can hang your lantern off the top there. Personally, I don't go camping with someone else sharing a tent very much. I've camped with my girlfriend once and we used one of my other tents, but generally speaking, I go out for solo camps, or I camp with a friend who's got their own tent. If there are 2 of you, this is a 5 kilo tent, basically, just underneath 5 kilos. The tent itself weighed out at 3 kilograms, so one of you could carry 3 kilos, the other could carry the remaining 1.9 kilos, whatever it is, with the footprint and the poles and the pegs or anything. Of course, you can save about half a kilo if you don't take the footprint, but it's just that ability to divide the tent out. So one of you has a 3 kilo load, the other one has a lighter load, and then you have a great big tent like this, and this is so strong. I am going to get the Guylines out in a second, just try and get a feel for how strong this tent is, but just the materials, every single bit I've looked at, the build quality, the stitching on everything, the strength of the materials. There's some really strong heavy-duty reinforcing on the peg-out points as well, which I'll show you. And just everywhere I look, it's all top-quality stuff. This heat-resistant panel here has really blown my mind. So to think that you could actually turn this into maybe a bit of a hot tent, or maybe it's just for having a proper stove down here, is quite unexpected. But yeah, it all feels really, really well made. And I have to say again, I have to compare it to Hilleberg because they are so comparable. It's right up there with the Hilleberg as far as I can tell straight away. This is only a first impressions video. I haven't taken it out yet, so you're just seeing everything as I see it, really. So let's get back outside. I'll put these Guylines up and let's see how strong this thing really is. As you can see, I've got 2 Guylines pegged out on this side now and 3 on this side. And I was just having a count up of how many stakes I've got left. So I've got 8 of these stakes left and there are 8 Guylines remaining. So in addition to those 8 guy points, there are also some little bungees halfway along each door. So there's a bungee down here, which means you can just pull that door out and keep it nice and tight if you want to. Obviously, if you're going to use the doors, you maybe wouldn't choose to do that, But what I can see is that much like on the Hillebergs, what you could do is attach the lower guy line and the upper guy line to one stake. So you could save one stake there. You could do the same here because you've got two guy lines on each pole. So you could actually save 1, 2, 3 stakes around here. Same on the other side, so that's 6 stakes you could save if you're happy to use a single stake for 2 guy lines. So if you save 6, that means I would only need 2 additional stakes for those, and that leaves me 4 for the doors and 2 spare. So they actually give you plenty of stakes to pitch this, but if you wanted to have every single guy line pegged out and each of the 4 doors as well, you would need to provide 4 extra stakes. I've got to say that when I go camping myself, I rarely just take the manufacturer supplied pegs or stakes. I take my own, and I just take as many as I think I might need to on that particular occasion. It depends on the ground conditions as well. You might want different stakes. These great big chunky Y stakes might not be any good for frozen ground, so maybe you'd want some rock pegs or nail pegs or something like that. But with the 24 stakes that are provided with the tent, you can fully pitch this, and the only bits that you wouldn't have pegged out would be the doors. But like I said, save yourself a couple of stakes by doubling up on the guy lines, and you can have everything pegged out. So with 5 guy lines in place plus the one at the end, this does feel like a strong tent. As I said earlier, with these crossing points here, it means that you have a really solid structure that is just going to take everything that nature throws at it from the looks of it so far. Like I say, the materials feel really, really good. I could have pitched this a little bit better, so some of this could be pulled out a bit better and pull the pegs out again. This is something you tend to have to do once you peg something in place. You readjust it once you got the poles in, got the guy lines in and tensioned everything up. I imagine I'd also get a little bit better at pitching this with practice, but it's a really nice straightforward pitching process. You put colour-coded pole in colour-coded sleeve, throw all the clips in, which are so easy to do. You can do those with one hand with no bother whatsoever. They just drop in and out. The biggest problem I had was reaching that middle clip, as I think you saw. If you're a shorter camper, I think that could be a real struggle, but I guess you could just carefully tuck your foot under the fly sheet and you'll be able to reach over and get that. But yeah, 9mm poles feel really good. I could actually tension these up a little bit more. As you do that, the whole structure just becomes that little bit more taut as well. So if we look at the tent from the end here, you can see that it's quite broad at the edges, which means that you don't get those really upright sides that just hit the wind like a slab. And then if I come around to the side as well, we've got a similar thing going on. So it's quite sloped out to the edges. So any wind coming from the side here is just going to sort of sweep over the top instead of just hitting a wall, which is where all the noise comes from. And it's also when you start stressing the tent unnecessarily, because you're just hitting the wind, and then the guy lines and the poles and the fabric have to take all those high forces that come with it. I do like it from the end here, so if you have a nice summer's evening, you can get both doors open like that, get really good air movement all the way through the tent. The inner doors, as you might be able to see, are dual skin, so you've got a no-seam mesh here, and all you need to do is unzip the second zip on the inside to separate the yellow mesh off the back there. You can see the guy line wraps here, so what you do is you pass the guy line through the strap there and then pull it out, and that means that you put the load straight into the pole system instead of purely pulling on the fabric here. Down at the ends of the tent, you've got this really strong black and white fabric here which reinforces the peg out point and the tension band strap attachment points, so you won't have any issues there. Same goes around here as well. You've got that black and white fabric just bracing over the thinner sil nylon there to protect it. You've got elastic toggle points to hold the doors back. You've got little stiffening beams in the hoods over the doors there just to hold your vent out a little bit to get some ventilation coming through at the top of the door. Here's the little bungee that holds your guy lines neatly out of the way. Problem is that the clips up here are the perfect shape just to snag on your guy lines, and that's something all the Hilleberg tents suffer from. So when you initially unravel your tent to try and pitch it, you have to untangle the whole thing. It becomes a very big frustrating puzzle when all you want to do is get your tent up. Here we've got the colour-coded sleeves, so you just have a little red piece of tape on the top. We've got blue on this one down here, and that coincides with the colour of the end of the pole. So this pole inside here is red, makes it nice and easy to put together. You've got nice strong fabric here and really tough reinforcement down at the bottom here. Feels like some kind of vinyl. And that means you don't really need to worry about poking the end of your pole through any of these materials when you're putting everything together in a hurry. I've done that in the past on a Van Gogh tent I had actually. I just pushed the pole straight through the end of the socket here, just ripped through, and now it's held together with some tape. Here you can see that vent up at the top of the door. So if you want to, you can unzip this at the top. Dual zippered doors, so that can go all the way down if you want it to. And that just means you can control the ventilation here. You can fully close it up if you want to, or just have it partially open and have the wind passing through to help keep those all-important condensation levels down. Viewing the door from the inside here, so that's the top of the door. I guess something I'd wonder about is if this might flap around a bit in the wind. I think on the Hillebergs, once you've zipped down the top, you can roll that up and bungee it in place so it won't blow around in the wind, whereas you can see that is free to hang around. I just wonder if that might flap a bit. But what we don't have is metal zip pullers that they have on Hillebergs. I think some people like them, but the first thing I did when I got my Hilleberg was take all those metal zip pullers off, because it's like having a percussion group playing a load of triangles in your tent at night when the wind picks up. So having these silent pull cords is definitely a plus point for me. So just before I give my final thoughts about this tent, I'm going to talk about the seam sealer. So it comes with a tube of silicone rubber sealant. It also comes with a little brush to help you to brush it along your seams. But if you go on Nortent's website, they have some really interesting blog sections that talk about their various processes and materials and the ideology behind their brand. And one of those bits of information is about the way they stitch their seams. And it's very similar to the technique that Hilleberg use. So on each seam, there are actually 4 layers of material that are stitched through, and the needles themselves that pass through the fabric are cooled, and that means that the hole stays as small as possible each time the needle punctures the material. And to stitch it, they then use an expanding thread. So when that thread gets wet, it expands and fills the hole. So what you end up with is actually a very watertight solution, and it might not be possible to call it technically 100% waterproof, but if it's anything like my Hilleberg, I really haven't spotted any points along my seams where water comes through and starts dripping through. So I personally am not going to seal this tent. That's for 2 reasons. Firstly, I'd like to see how it performs. I imagine it's going to be just the same as my Hilleberg and I won't have any issues. But secondly, I'd rather not spend that time if I don't have to. So if I find at any point that I get water leaking through and it's an issue, I have a solution here I can brush on if I feel I need to, but I'm really not expecting to have to do that. So as the sun starts to go down here in Somerset, I suppose the sun needs to set on my review of this tent. Well, let's not call it a review. Some people get slightly angry about that. We must make sure that this is a first look or first impressions video, and I'll give you some of my final thoughts now on the Nortent Vern 2. I've done a lot of talking in this video, so thanks for sticking with me through to the end, and I'll just give my final summary here after taking my very first look at the Vern 2 from Nortent. I mean, the overriding impression is that this is a really strong bit of kit, and it also represents good value if you ask me. So this is getting on for 5 kilos with a footprint, 4.5 kilos without, of very sturdy tent. The materials are really strong. The tear strength of this material is slightly stronger than the Red Label Hillebergs. The poles are really sturdy. The 9mm, you've got 5 of them, so you've got a really strong structure to the tent here. You've got 14 guylines around it. You've got the bungees around the corners, and it's a really straightforward pitch. You do have a lot of clips to work your way through, and you've got 5 poles, of course, and you've got 24 stakes that come with it. So just by its nature, you do have quite a lot of admin to get through to pitch the thing, but at least it's straightforward. Some tents are really awkward to pitch, and I found that straight away, just pegging the base out, throwing the poles in, clipping them on, this did pitch well. I like quite a lot of its features. Having 4 doors is an absolute bonus. Having 2 really big usable vestibules is great. There's genuine space in there for 2 people, as I've demonstrated with my mats. You've got loads of headroom as well, so you're not going to be short of space with this tent. What that does, of course, mean is that it has quite a big footprint, so you do need to find quite a big spot to put this tent down. That's why personally I really like small one-man tents, one-person tents, because you can fit them just about anywhere, whereas this is going to need a bigger area, and of course the bigger the area you need, the harder it is to find an area that doesn't have rocks in it. It's nice and level, it's flat all the way across, so that's something to bear in mind. But if you're shopping for a two-man tent anyway, chances are you're going to be considering those things, and that's a trade-off that you're willing to make. So I think I'll call that the end of this review now. I think I've spoken about everything I can talk about for now. This is my first Nortent product I've experienced, and I am straight away really impressed by everything. They've been really friendly to deal with. I like that there's been some feedback from some of the initial reviews of the Vern 1 tent, and Nortent have taken those feedback points on board and they're digesting those and looking to make some changes. I think if you're looking to buy a two-person tent that can take some real abuse, you have to consider this tent, because it is going to be one of the market leaders. I would say that might be a very bold statement to make on my first view of this tent, but looking at what people have found with the Vern 1, this is just a slightly scaled up version of the Vern 1, and it really looks as though it will take a proper hammering. And because it's a Norwegian tent, it has been designed and tested to take snow loading as well. So if you plan on taking this on snowy camps as well, you shouldn't need to worry about snow build up on the roof. Okay, so I have to say a massive thanks to Nortent. Thank you very much for sending this to me to have a proper look at it. I'm really looking forward to lugging this up some mountains and seeing how I get on with it. It's going to be a good challenge to carry this up a mountain on my own to start with, but then to have all that space to relax in will be pretty good fun, I think. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, then please put them in the comments section below. I really like it when people get involved. If there's anything I've failed to show you, please let me know. The daylight really faded faster than I thought it would today, so I might have enjoyed having a little bit more time to play with this the first time. But yeah, if there's anything you'd like me to show you, if there's anything you've noticed that you would like me to maybe measure or check, or maybe have some questions for Nortent and I can relay those for you if you like, let me know and I'll help where I can. But you'll have to come back and join me for my first use of this tent out in the wild. I'll see you on the next one.